9 vicious and heartless killers, plus one other brazen offender who we wouldn't mind topping, all 10 perpetrators having been sentenced in September 2025. Enjoy. In the UK, we keep hearing about prison officers getting banged up themselves for things like bringing illicit substances into prisons and, even more notoriously, for shagging prison inmates. In March 2020, father of 3 Lenny Scott from Lancashire, North England, though, refused a £1,500 bribe from an inmate by the name of Elias Morgan at Outcourse Prison in Liverpool, northwest England. The payment was to get Mr Scott to keep quiet about the phone that he had found in Morgan's possession and which he, Mr Scott, had duly confiscated. Picking up on my mention of prison officers getting locked up for having a sexual relationship with inmates, which is charged under the offence of misconduct in public office, or MIPO, Sarah Williams, a former prison officer at HMP Outcourse, is, as I record this, doing time for having had a sexual relationship with Elias Morgan, Morgan's phone having provided evidence of that. Now viewer, if I've got you hooked on the story so far, do subscribe, give the video a like, drop a comment when you're ready and donate. Hit the thanks button below, I'll appreciate you. As you can now see, Morgan's attempt to silence Mr Scott over the phone wasn't simply to avoid punishment for being in possession of a phone, because prisoners aren't allowed to have phones. The man knew how serious the consequences of the discovery of his sexual liaisons with Sarah Williams could be. In handing the phone over to investigators though, Mr Scott was acting in accordance, of course, with his professional duty. Born in either 1989 or 1990, Morgan had once taken part in an £83,000 bank robbery in which staff were threatened with machetes. He also had convictions for theft, conspiracy to rob, drugs offences and for causing serious injury by dangerous driving. Having been released in 2022, when he executed Mr Scott, as he did on the 8th of February 2024, he was 11 days away from his trial relating to his sexual interactions with a prison officer. Morgan perpetrated Mr Scott's execution, moreover, exactly as he had threatened to, the man having told Mr Scott that for passing the phone on to investigators he would kill him, but that he would bide his time. These threats having been accompanied with a gun gesture of his. He did a 2-finger pointing thing, the way that kids do. At the time of the shooting, Mr Scott himself, who was then aged 33, was no longer working as a prison officer. In response to an incident from 2021, you see, which involved the restraint of another prisoner, he was sacked, and sorry, but I couldn't trace any further details to the matter. Now, whatever that might make us think of Mr Scott, can we please keep in mind that he was innocent and that Morgan had no right to do what he did to him. So, on the 8th of February 2024, 4 whole years after he first threatened to kill Mr Scott, which was in line with his intention to wait a while before getting his own back on Mr Scott by murdering him, Morgan waited for 53 minutes outside the gym on Peel Road in Skelmersdale for Mr Scott to leave his jiu-jitsu practice. At 7:35 p.m, the moment when Mr Scott duly emerged from the gym, Morgan, who for reasons that I'm about to share was wearing a high-vis orange jacket, walked up to him, pointed his self-loading handgun at him and shot him all of 6 times at close range. Mr Scott dropped dead. Morgan, meanwhile, promptly took flight in a van that had been left nearby the previous evening by his close friend Anthony Clary, aged 29. Anthony's story is coming up. The preparation that Morgan did both for the murder and for the subsequent cover-up revealed the extent of the man's careful planning and premeditation. The preparation included the discovery of Mr Scott's movement. The man literally stalked Mr Scott, where Mr Scott lived with his partner and his 3 very young children, the gym that he used in Skelmersdale, plus a recce drive by Morgan to the said places a month before the shooting.
Hello, may I start, please?
Hi, I'm an officer at HMP Outcourse. I've been informed that there's been a car set outside my house all weekend by a prisoner, and I believe it's there at the moment.
Is there anyone at home who can confirm it?
Confirm which? Sorry.
That the car's outside?
Well, they're not aware because I don't really want to alarm them because
You're going to have to get someone to look out to see if there's a car.
Okay. Well, they're not going to sit directly outside it because it's a prison threatening my family.
Right. Okay. So what's your name, please?
Lenny Scott.
Is that Lenny Scott?
Yeah.
Lenny, what's your date of birth, love?
15th to the 10th, 1990.
And who's made the threat?
Elias Morgan. He's described my family and me to a T. Described my house. He said he's had them there just ready for because it's over. I've nicked them for a phone.
Ah, right.
And
okay.
he's until I drop that, he said to stay in there, and they're just going to constantly be around my house and.
Right. Okay.
Just in fear for my family's life. That's all.
Okay. And has he described the vehicle at all?
No, he hasn't. He said he's got lads everywhere, so he says he's described my vehicle and he's described my house and what my girlfriend and twin boys look like.
Is there any way that he's excuse my French, but is he chatting over this?
No, I believe this is real. Yeah, it's too specific because my twins, they're twins, but they've got different colour hair.
Yeah. So
it's just a bit. He's got everything to a T. He knows. He's described me everything. Yeah, an iPhone he had. So and he reckons it's going to incriminate him. So that's why he's going to these lengths.
Right. When was this?
That was Friday. He said he's had people sat outside all weekend.
Has anyone reported anything to you, like your family, or have you noticed anyone?
Recently a couple over the road, I believe they're dealing anyway,
right.
Has moved in, so I've just assumed any car that was there or hovering was to do with them.
So he's described your house, yeah?
Yeah, my vehicle.
Are your family at home at the moment?
Yeah. I don't know what's best, whether to tell her or... Sorry if you think I'm wasting time.
No, you're really not.
Yeah.
So at home is it your partner or your wife?
Wife. No, partner.
What's her name, please?
Lucy Griffiths.
And kids, the twins? Is it just the twins?
Yeah.
And is this your mobile? No, it's not.
I've rang from the jail, sorry.
Do you know what? I'd be tempted just to carry on so they don't see you going home. Is there any chance you can then get your girlfriend to meet with you? Does she drive?
She doesn't drive, no.
She doesn't drive? All right.
No.
In that case, you would have to go home, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not... personally, it's not... I can deal with whatever. I'm fine with that. It's them.
Is he from Merseyside?
Yeah, I think speak.
As soon as the next available car will get deployed, we'll ask them to ring you rather than have a patrol and go to your house.
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't know you're going to play it with your missus, and also we don't want to alert them. Right, you've contacted us. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, love. It's log 217, like I said. If you just try and bear with us on that, and we'll get the next available patrol to make contact with yourself.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care now.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries. Bye, love.
Morgan also obtained an e-bike, which was carried in the van that his friend Anthony, as I just mentioned, dropped off for him in Daybrook the night before the shooting. Daybrook is just a few minutes away from the gym in Peel Road, where Mr. Scott was gunned down. Morgan used another vehicle to travel from Liverpool to Skelmersdale. It was a Mercedes GLC which was registered to his mother. He got to Skelmersdale around an hour before the shooting, because remember I said he waited for Mr. Scott for 53 minutes. However, he parked a short distance away from the gym in order, of course, to avoid suspicion. The e-bike, meanwhile, was used by Morgan to travel quietly to and from the scene in a rehearsal of the route for the shooting. Morgan wore the said high-vis orange jacket so that after the shooting he could remove it and make it harder for him to be identified as the shooter. The van, the bike and the gun had never to this day been recovered, Morgan having disposed of those things with utmost efficiency. So how did Morgan get caught then? A few days after murdering Mr. Scott, he returned to Skelmersdale and changed the number plate of the Mercedes that he had used to get to the town on the night of the murder, and then he moved the vehicle to another location. He subsequently repeated those two steps twice more in an effort, as is obvious I'd say, to throw police off the scent of the car. The perpetrator even went to the extent of removing the SOS unit from the car, sorry but I don't know what that is, fearing as he did that its manufacturer's SIM card might provide data of the vehicle's movement. Unluckily for Morgan, however, he didn't know that there was another manufacturer's SIM card which provided the telematics data that the police needed, and that's how the man got caught. When he was subsequently arrested, Morgan went no comment in each of his police interviews.
These officers will speak to you and explain to us. Yeah. Everything's on camera, it's just...
Right, Elias.
That's really 1 second. That's three.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Do you want to open that room for us?
Sorry, can I use the shoe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go on, secure your lady for us.
Yeah. Elias, it's 11 o'clock, mate. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder, right? Yeah. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you don't mention. On question, something which you'll later find in court. Yeah. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand? No reply? Alright, reason for that, mate. Prompt and effective investigation, mate. Alright, so we can interview you over the matter. Alright? Just that way for us? You got bills on underneath me, yeah?
No, don't wear bills then.
You haven't?
No.
What have you got here?
Money.
How much is that?
No more than 250. 290. 290.
Can you go around your waistband, mate? Right? Spin around for us. And again.
As for his friend Anthony, after initially being charged with Mr. Scott's murder alongside Morgan, Anthony was cleared of that charge in court after convincing the jury that he had no knowledge that the e-bike and the van that he had been in charge of were being used in a murder. He also betrayed Morgan with his courtroom testimony that, rather than having been, quote, seeing a man about a dog, unquote, in Liverpool at the time of the shooting, as Morgan had claimed, the perpetrator had called him that night to say that he had, quote, done someone in Skem, unquote, and that Anthony should get rid of his phone. Lenny Scott is sorely missed, not just by his 3 little kids, but also by many others.
The murder of the deceased has caused profound grief to the deceased's family, his young children, and to all who knew him. He was 33 years old with much of his life ahead of him. He was loved, respected, and made his family proud. The attempts by you during the trial to blacken his character have been rejected by the jury. In the victim's personal statements, this court has heard the very moving statements from his mother, Paula Scott, his father, Neil Scott, and his former partners, Lucy Carnhill and Lucy Griffiths, the mother of his children, who must all bear their suffering for the rest of their lives.
On the 2nd of September 2025 at Preston Crown Court, Morgan got life with a minimum term of, wait for it, 45 years. This is way longer than the typical sentence for murder here in the UK, and with good reason.
In addition to the very significant degree of planning, is that this was a revenge killing of the deceased for what he did lawfully as part of his duty as a serving prison officer. There is an important public interest in making the killing of prison and police officers in the course of their duty exceptionally serious. This is expressly reflected within Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020. Whilst the deceased was not acting in the course of his duty when he was murdered, because he was no longer a prison officer, the killing was carried out because of what he lawfully did when he was acting in the course of his duty. It was revenge threatened by you when the deceased was a prison officer. The public interest in making the murder of former prison and police officers for their lawful actions while serving officers must require, in my judgment, sentencing on the basis that it is of particular seriousness to a very high degree.
Taking away the 15 months that he'd already served on remand before his murder trial, Morgan will be around 79 before he becomes eligible to apply for parole. You know what you get when you cross a trust fund baby who used to play with Prince Harry and Prince William when she was little, thanks to her family's royal connections, with a convicted rapist who did 22 years in prison in Florida, USA, don't you? I'm talking about after the removal of the couple's 4th child by social services and just before the birth of their 5th child. That's right, you get a newborn baby girl called Victoria, who only gets to live for a few days, all because of the selfish, reckless and stupid decisions of her selfish, reckless and stupid parents. Born in 1987, Constance Marten is the daughter of Napier Marten, who once served as Page of Honour to Queen Elizabeth. You only get to fulfil one such role if you're of royal or noble stock yourself. After getting a private education at St Mary's School in Shaftesbury, Constance, who I'll now be referring to as Marten, studied Arabic at the University of Leeds and then worked for Al Jazeera. After becoming estranged from her family in 2012, which was after she did lots of travelling through Africa and other places, Constance had to demand her due payment from her trust fund since the trustees had been holding the payments back. The reasons for which I'll share in a separate video, a deep dive into the story of rich girl turned fugitive turned baby killer, Constance Marten. The man that Marten met in an incense shop in Tottenham, North East London in 2014, whose name was Mark Gordon, and I will of course be calling him Gordon from now on, had moved with his mother from Birmingham to Florida, USA by his early teens, the man having been born in 1974. Over 2 decades later, Gordon had been deported back to the UK after being released 18 years early from his 40-year sentence for rape, burglary, false imprisonment and aggravated battery. Gordon committed the said offences when he was 14. In 2016, while travelling together in Peru, Marten and Gordon were married in a ceremony that isn't actually recognised in the UK. When they returned to the UK, Marten was pregnant with her first child. Marten didn't attend antenatal checks until she was 6 months pregnant, and she told midwives that she lived in a camper van. When she stopped coming to appointments, worried medical staff issued a national alert, asking other hospitals to look out for her and Gordon. However, the couple had already left London. As Marten's due date approached, she and Gordon were living in a tent near a supermarket car park in Carmarthen in Wales. Arriving at the hospital after going into labour, Marten showed signs of growing paranoia. She gave a false name and spoke with a fake Irish accent, telling staff that she was from the travelling community.
Marten, you gave the name of Isabella O'Brien and Gordon the name of James Amer. No NHS antenatal care had been provided. Marten, you told hospital staff you'd travelled from Leeds to avoid family. You spoke with a fake Irish accent. You claimed to be from the travelling community and had been raised in a caravan. You said you were no longer in a relationship with the father of the child and that your family disapproved of a child being born out of wedlock. You claimed never to have been to school, not to have been registered with a GP and didn't have an NHS number. You claimed that Gordon, using the name Amer, was a friend you'd known for about a month, but was not the father of the child. You said you didn't have anything with you for the baby. The lies told indicate the level of deception you were content to practice to suit yourselves.
However, staff weren't convinced, and remembering the national alert issued in London, they called the police. There was a struggle, and officers, assisted by other fathers on the maternity ward, had to use CS spray to restrain Gordon. Gordon was arrested and later sentenced to 20 weeks in prison for assaulting 2 female officers, and as such, he clearly missed the first few weeks of his new baby's life. With her partner behind bars, Marten went to stay in a placement for mothers and babies who need extra support. However, her neglectful behaviour towards her baby, including her drinking and her habit of falling asleep with the baby on her chest, led, months later, to a court order enabling the supervision of Marten's parenting by social services. By late 2018, Marten and Gordon were back in London and they had their toddler with them. They lived at various addresses, leaving without paying their rent more than once, according to landlords. After the birth of their second child, social services were again involved. And then, when she was 14 weeks pregnant with her third child, Marten fell from a first floor window. When an ambulance crew arrived, true to form, Gordon initially refused to let them in and police were called. Marten spent 8 days in hospital, but thankfully her unborn baby wasn't harmed. The woman told police that she'd been trying to fix the TV aerial when she fell from the window, but a judge later decided that, on the balance of probabilities, it was Gordon who had caused Marten to fall. And who in today's times has to fix a TV aerial? Do we even still have TV aerials? In any case, soon after she was released from the hospital after that fall, the 2 children that the couple already had were taken into care. And then 6 months later, in other words 2 weeks after Marten gave birth for a third time, that child was also removed. Marten and Gordon were able to visit their children in care and would bring music or presents for their children. They would comfort the children if they were upset and sing and dance with them. Gordon planted apple seeds in the contact centre's garden, one for each member of the family. But then he and Marten began missing the visits. They gave no explanation to the children for the gaps in their attendance, and eventually they stopped going to see their kids completely. By May 2021, Marten had given birth to a 4th child who was removed after only a week. The court furthermore ruled that the removal of all the children should be permanent, and with hindsight we can see how justified the court was with that ruling, and we can only think to ourselves if only they had done the same with Sarah Sharif and with all other children who've been left in the care, if you want to call it that, of their parents, only to lose their lives at the hands of their parents. In September 2022, Marten was pregnant again. Fearing that this baby would be taken away, she and Gordon left their home in South East London, again without paying the rent, and made preparations to disappear. Marten had been stockpiling money, and over the next 4 months she and Gordon lived in various Airbnbs, moving on frequently to avoid detection. Police started looking for the couple though on the 5th of January 2023 when their Peugeot 206 car was found burning next to the M61 motorway in Bolton, Greater Manchester. Evidence was discovered that Marten had given birth several days before. The couple had asked a passing motorist to take them and their baby to the nearest services, and from there the couple with their baby travelled by taxis to Liverpool, then to Harwich in Essex, then to London and finally to Brighton. They got to Brighton on the 8th of January. They may well have wanted to leave the UK, however they couldn't because Marten had left her passport in the car. Down in Brighton, the couple lived rough with their newborn baby daughter, Victoria, in a small flimsy tent in the depths of an English winter. In CCTV that captured the family, Victoria was seen inadequately dressed for the cold weather, sometimes without socks, without a hat and with no blanket. Her parents bought a buggy that was inappropriate for a newborn, and how they could have made them that mistake after the number of children they'd already had, God knows. So because it wasn't right for Victoria, they just dumped it the very day that they bought it, and they then alternated between carrying Victoria inside Marten's jacket and inside a carrier bag. The couple were found and arrested in Hollingdean in Brighton on the 27th of February 2023. They refused to respond to repeated questioning concerning the location of Victoria, their newborn baby daughter.
You stop for a second. Stop for a while. Well, I need to speak to you. Well, because potentially I think you may have been in national news. Right, you can't wait for me. So, put the stick down. Drop it now.
Right.
Put the stick down, and I'll explain.
Right.
Put the stick. Let go of the stick. The stick in your hand.
Right.
Let go of the stick.
Right.
Let go of the stick.
Why?
Because at the moment, I'm potentially going to be a weapon. And if you're who I believe you might be, you might have quite a good reason to get away from me.
Hey, let me eat.
I'll let you. Right, at the moment you.
Put the stuff down. We're going to put you in cuffs. Then we will talk about you eating.
Let me have my food.
No.
You can.
Cheers. Oh, look at the photo right now.
Where's the child, madam?
Where is the child, please?
Daddy Bear.
Look at me.
Constance.
Constance, Arabella, whoever you are.
Right, where's your child?
Have we searched it?
Yeah, this isn't at the front, is it? I've just asked. I'm going to undo it now. I've just.
I'll level with you. You're under arrest for child neglect. Section 27 Offence Against the Person Act. Expose a child under the age of 2 years where his life or health is to be endangered. Do you understand? Understand what I've said to you? Do you understand what I've said to you? You've been further arrested for 3 more offences. Where's your child, my friend? Where's the child?
And my food, please.
In a minute, where's your child? Where's your child?
Food?
In a minute. Where's your child? Where's your child?
And my food, please.
In a minute, where's your child?
Food.
Not on the
What are
menu.
you grabbing me for? Would have any food?
Chicken.
Chicken, alright? No, where's mayonnaise, please?
With mayonnaise? We're not going to be able to give you an entire meal,
Mayonnaise
mate.
over there.
On the 1st of March, Victoria's body was found wrapped in a plastic bag and hidden inside a shed on an allotment near to where the couple had been arrested. A pathologist concluded that it wasn't possible to determine the cause of Victoria's death, but said that she could have died from the cold or from co-sleeping. Marten and Gordon denied harming their baby and concealing her death. On the 14th of July 2025, however, they were both found guilty of the manslaughter by gross negligence of their newborn baby daughter, Victoria.
In my judgment, it is clear that throughout the period from the end of December until your arrest, neither of you gave much, if any, thought to the care or welfare of your baby. Your focus was on yourselves. When you were arrested, neither of you was prepared to give any assistance to the police about the whereabouts of your daughter's body. Your silence at that stage of events is highly significant. If, as you have both sought to claim, this was a terrible accident, why not alert the authorities then, and why, once arrested, not say where the body was to be found? You claimed you wanted dignity for your baby's body, and yet your conduct displays the complete opposite. In the course of the trials, you have both sought to put the blame on everyone else, on the police for the hunt for the baby, and you on members of the public. You've claimed some have made up what they said or did in their presence. For others, you suggest all they wanted was their moment in the limelight. What your attitude completely fails to acknowledge is that it was the safety and well-being of your baby and the two of you that was paramount concern to the police and to members of the public. Had the police not sought to find you or to make public appeals for assistance, and members of the public not responded by reporting sightings, then many would criticise them for not acting as they should have done.
At their first trial, which took place in 2024, they were convicted of child cruelty, concealing baby Victoria's birth and perverting the course of justice. On the 15th of September 2025, at the Old Bailey, Marten and Gordon each got 14 years, Gordon in addition being given an extended licence of a further 4 years. Direece Roche is exactly why, one might argue, a murderer should always be given a forever prison sentence, otherwise known as a whole life order. After getting out of prison for committing one murder, you see, the man went and committed another murder. Roche committed his first murder when he was 16. He and his brother Owen went round to the home of Adam Steele in Salford in Manchester, northwest England. The occasion was New Year's Day. They went round to try to find Owen's girlfriend. There'd been some struggles and tensions between Owen and his girlfriend, and when the brothers turned up to Adam Steele's flat, they demanded to know where the girl or woman was at. That caused an argument that erupted into the street, and Direece Roche, for whatever reason, got out a knife and stabbed Adam Steele to death with it. For that murder, Roche got a life sentence with a minimum of 12 years. His brother, meanwhile, got an indeterminate sentence for manslaughter. 8 years after Roche was sent down, his legal team tried to get him out early. They said he was a reformed character, he had an excellent prison record, and he had raised money for charity, he had cut ties with all his criminal friends, and he was planning on enrolling for a psychology degree. There's no doubt that the judges were very impressed with the progress that Roche had made in prison, but they ultimately refused him early release because they just weren't convinced that he was fully reformed, fully rehabilitated. And we can see now that their scepticism was fully justified. For instance, on day release from HMP Kirkham in Lancashire in May 2023, Roche was found with a lock knife in his bag. He denied knowing anything about it, but in any case, he was released from prison that same year, September 2023. So off Roche went out of prison. Freedom was his again, although he is on licence, or rather was on licence forever, because when you get a life sentence, which you always get for murder, you do whatever your minimum term is, and then when you get out, you're on licence for the rest of your life, which means that you have to live by a strict set of rules, and if you break any of those rules, you can be sent back to prison for any length of time. Knowing that he had his licence hanging over him for the rest of his life, 9 months later, Roche went and murdered his great uncle, Fintan McDwyer. A father and a grandfather, Fintan McDwyer was 64. He lost his wife back in 2005. By the time of his murder, he was retired, and one of his favourite hobbies was taking his beloved dog Sammy for daily walks in his local park. When Direece Roche was little, he knew his great uncle. They would see each other regularly enough, but as Roche got older, his uncle, for whatever reason, fell out of his life. And another important point about Roche is that 3 years before he murdered Adam Steele, which, sorry for not saying this earlier, he did in 2011, he lost his mother. Her name was Samantha Toohey, and she committed suicide in 2008. In the note that she left behind, she said that when she was little, she was essayed by one of her uncles. Fintan McDwyer was one of her uncles, but the fact is, Samantha had 12 other uncles, and she didn't say which one it was, if it was any. Sorry, maybe she was essayed, maybe she wasn't. I personally don't know. So there was no evidence that it was Fintan McDwyer, and after Fintan's murder, the police looked into whether it could have been him, and they couldn't find any evidence to say that it was. So now we're all probably wondering, did Roche believe that that particular great uncle of his, Fintan McDwyer, was the one who had essayed his mother? And if so, was that why he decided to kill his great uncle? Just before killing his great uncle, Roche actually went to visit his mother's grave. She is buried in Southern Cemetery in Chorlton, and then, just a few hours after murdering his great uncle, he went back to her grave again. On the day that Roche murdered his great uncle Fintan was home alone, except for his dog Sammy. His son Ryan, you see, had gone away to a wedding with his girlfriend. Late at night on the 29th of June 2024, Roche put on a balaclava and other dark clothing. He left his home in Longside and went on foot to the home of his great uncle. He went through people's gardens, and when he got to his great uncle's home, he tried to open a ground floor window to get in. He wasn't able to do so, but then he found a ladder in a nearby garden, and he used it to climb up to his uncle's bedroom window, and he got in that way. And then in a matter of about 90 seconds, he stabbed his great uncle to death. and he stabbed him 77 times. Fintan's body was only discovered 2 days later when his son Ryan came home. Police arrested Roche in his home on the 6th of July. It was easy for them to find him because they found DNA on objects that were left near the home of Fintan McDwyer, including some blood that was smeared on a fence, because remember, he'd got into his great-uncle's home by climbing through gardens of neighbouring houses. And remember, because Roche is a convicted murderer with a criminal record, his DNA was in the police database. In his police interviews, he told them that he himself, as a child, had been essayed by his great-uncle Fintan McDwyer. It turns out, though, that that was the first time he had ever mentioned the matter to anybody. And he said that the reason for that was because beforehand he was too scared to talk about it. Roche also claimed that his great-uncle had told him that his dog Sammy was named after his mother, Samantha Toohey. He said that that link disturbed him and that he decided that he had to steal the dog. Somehow that would stop the idea of the dog being named after his mother disturbing him. And we're all thinking, oh, you went to steal a dog, so you took a great big knife with you. Don't know how big the knife is, but you get the point. But the thing is, Roche denied that he actually owned the knife. He denied he'd carried it with him. He said rather that the knife was his great-uncle's and that he had had to wrestle it away from his great-uncle. That obviously implies that his great-uncle was the one who attacked him. Funnily enough, the court didn't quite believe him, especially considering that Roche had stabbed his uncle 77 times. That is not self-defence. That's a furious, frenzied, ferocious act of murder. On the 19th of September 2025, he was told that he would spend the rest of his life in prison because he was given a whole life order. Reuben Higgins was only 17 when, in October 2024, he was murdered in Marston Green, Solihull in the West Midlands by 4 other teenagers. As at the time of this recording, only one of those 4 is old enough to be named, and his name is Abdurrahman Summers. On the evening of the 29th of October 2024, Reuben was in Marston Green together with 3 of his friends. By coincidence, the 3 perpetrators, together with a 4th man named Mass, were also there. The 2 groups didn't know one another and they had no contact with one another until about 6:15 p.m. At 6:15 p.m, the perpetrators group approached Reuben's group and spoke to them. At first, that was all friendly, but then Mass suggested that he recognised Reuben as someone who had previously pulled a knife on him. There is no evidence to suggest that that had actually happened, and when Mass asked Reuben to go around the corner with him, Reuben refused. The man was unarmed, he didn't want any trouble, and he was backing away in an effort to avoid confrontation. Mass, however, then reached for a distinctive knife in his waistband. As he did that, the 3 perpetrators were moving forwards and 2 witnesses gave evidence that they reached for their waistbands. Reuben and his friends all fled, but went in different directions. Reuben ran a short distance up the main road and sought refuge in a shop called the Vape Mini Market. He was pursued, however, by Mass and by the other 3 perpetrators. Reuben sought to keep the door of the shop closed by lying down in front of it, whereupon the chasing group attacked the door in an effort to force it open. In court, the jury heard from a witness who was working in the shop, whose name is Farhan Tahar. He told them that he saw 3 or 4 people punching, kicking and pushing at the door. He described the group as shouting, swearing and being very aggressive. He told the jury that they all pushed together and forced the door open, and then all 4 of those outside came in. So the door opened inwards, pushing Reuben into a corner which was partly covered by the shop CCTV. Mr. Taha told the jury that Reuben was picked up off the floor and then attacked. He described seeing people making stabbing motions towards him, but didn't actually see any knives. The attack lasted no more than 10 seconds, but in that time, Reuben was stabbed 4 times by at least 2 knives. Mr. Taha believes that all of those that entered his shop were involved in stabbing Reuben, but A perpetrator coded COH and Abdurrahman Summers weren't captured by the CCTV in circumstances where they probably would have been if they had actively been stabbing Reuben. But unluckily for them, that does not in any way reduce their liability. They've got joint liability, even if they didn't physically perform the act of stabbing and murdering Reuben. Mr. Taha described one of the other perpetrators, who's coded as SER, as being the most aggressive of the attackers, and that is borne out by the CCTV, which shows the man, or the youth rather, was only a teenager, assaulting Reuben, and while he was doing so, Mass was standing behind him. Having been stabbed, Reuben fell to the floor, where he was kicked all over his body. The attacking group then fled, and the external CCTV captured COH leaving the shop at the end of the attack. The attacking group then fled, but SER returned within minutes because he realised that he had dropped his phone. He re-entered the shop and asked Mr. Taha where his phone was. As he did that, Reuben was lying on the ground, obviously seriously injured. SER completely ignored Reuben, and when Mr. Taha told him that he didn't know where his phone was, he just turned and walked out. One of the stabbing injuries inflicted upon Reuben went into his chest to a depth of 6 centimetres. That wound penetrated his heart, causing rapid blood loss and eventually cardiac arrest. Members of the public and then paramedics sought to assist Reuben, but it was to no avail, and Reuben was declared dead just after 7 p.m. The perpetrators were arrested over the next 8 days. Prior to his arrest, Abdurrahman Summers travelled to London and unsuccessfully tried to buy a flight to Spain. He was able to buy a bus ticket to Madrid, but ultimately he didn't go, and instead he went back to Birmingham. Mass fled to Pakistan, and to this day, or rather up to and including the time of this recording, he still hasn't been caught. The 4 factors that aggravated the sentence given to SER include, firstly, that even though he didn't deliver the fatal blow to Reuben, he played a leading role in what was a group attack. Secondly, when he returned to the vape shop, he stole Reuben's phone. Thirdly, when he committed his horrendous acts against Reuben, he was on police bail. Fourthly, in December 2024, he was sentenced for an offence of theft. That was the offence for which he was on police bail when he helped kill Reuben. That offence involved him stealing a phone from a schoolboy in circumstances where one of his group was in possession of a knife. This was an offence which came close to amounting to robbery, and the victim was a child. Where COH is concerned, there were 3 aggravating factors to his sentence. Number 1, in 2023, when he was 13 or 14, he committed no fewer than 10 robberies and or attempted robberies. Altogether, there were 10 offences. He committed most of those robberies or attempted robberies together with others. He likes his group crimes, and several of those robberies or attempted robberies involved either the production or mention of a knife. On at least one occasion, he was in possession of a knife himself. Secondly, at the time of the murder, he, like SER, was on bail. And thirdly, he was subject to 2 conditional discharges and a referral order at the time when he killed or helped to kill Reuben. And there were 2 aggravating features in the sentence given to Abdurrahman Summers. Firstly, he committed 6 offences of robbery and an offence of possessing a knife between 2020 and 2022. Most of those offences were committed as part of a group. Several of them involved a knife being mentioned or shown to the victim, and on one occasion he was in possession of a knife himself. He was only aged between 14 and 16 when he committed those crimes, but they nonetheless show a pattern of using weapons to threaten violence, and they make his position more serious. Secondly, he was convicted of the last of those robberies in April 2023 and sentenced to 3 years in a young offenders institution. He was out on licence following his release from that sentence, and at the time that he took part in Reuben's murder, clearly He didn't give a toss about the fact that he was on licence. At the time of Reuben's murder, Sir and Co were both 15, while Summers was 18. Sir and Co came from very chaotic and abusive backgrounds, including disrupted schooling, some child exploitation going on there. S has a really serious illness called Marten syndrome. It affects his blood and he's going to need lots of hospital treatment, or at least clinical treatment, while he's in custody on an ongoing basis. I'm quoting these things to show you the mitigating factors that the judge had to take into account when he sentenced the 3 perpetrators. As to what they actually got, their sentencing having come on the 15th of September 2025 at Birmingham Crown Court. S got 17 years. C got 15 years and Summers got 19 years. These are all the minimum length of time that they have to spend in prison because they've all got life sentences. If and when they're ever released, they'll be on licence for life. Hadush Kebatu, the Ethiopian asylum-seeker whose alleged acts of SA, alleged being what they were at the time, against a schoolgirl triggered the protests that took place over a number of days outside the Bell Hotel in Epping, Essex. The Bell Hotel being a migrant hotel, is now doing 12 months in prison for those acts of SA. Those acts aren't alleged anymore. The man was convicted of those offences a few days ago, and then on the 23rd of September 2025 at Chelmsford Magistrates Court, he got his 12-month prison sentence. He committed his offences on the 7th and the 8th of July 2025, so he's clearly been put through the court system quite rapidly. I don't know if he was fast-tracked for some reason, or if acts of SA, charges of SA that have the same sort of key facts as his own, normally get put through the courts that quickly. In any event, this is how the man behaved during the moment of his arrest.
It's now 17:50 and I'm arresting you on suspicion of sexual assault on a female under 16 years old. So you didn't have to say anything. It may harm your defence if you didn't mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence, okay? We're arresting you for prompt and effective investigation by means of interview and prevent harm to yourself or others. Okay?
No problem.
So give us 2 minutes, we'll just bottom a few things out and then we're going to start getting rid of a few people. So
how much minutes?
Yeah. Sorry?
Well, how much minutes?
What do you mean, how much we need?
How much minutes in the office? How many minutes on how many hours are in the office?
You go to the police station now.
Okay.
So you're under arrest.
Wow,
should you research? Yeah, do you want to jump out? I'm going to cuff you as well.
I'm not criminal, sir.
Jump out for me.
Okay, no problem. Okay.
Jump out for me, it's easier.
Poverty bag, yeah, for anything.
Jump up, stand up.
Okay.
Put your hands like this for me.
Okay. Thank you.
And just come and step on
there for me, sir. Okay, she is right.
Give me 1 second, I'll call you back.
She is right. The phone
put that in there.
the lady in blue. Yes, the lady. Yeah.
He thinks it's
She's
the lady
drinking,
in blue.
and I pass. Please call me. You are black man. You are coming, man. You are coming my home.
It's a child.
Yeah. She's coming my
So the allegation is that you've touched a child on the inside of the groin.
I am a teacher.
Come over here, I need to search you. Don't cry, it's going to be okay. Come step onto the pavement so I've got a little bit more, bit more room. You can leave your shoes on, it's okay. Step onto the pavement here. No, stand up. Stand.
Up. There we go.
And then towards me.
Watch.
Follow.
Okay.
The offences for which Kebatu now has convictions include attempted SA on a child aged 14, inciting or causing a child aged 13 to 15 to engage in wahal activity. I am disguising certain words because of YouTube's decency policies. SA on a female aged 14, harassment without violence, and SA on a female. To determine the man's sentence, the judge was given, in advance of the sentencing hearing, a pre-sentence report which provides him or her, it was a him in this case, with the education that he needs in order to set a fair sentence that's very unlikely to be appealed. And the judge made the point that the pre-sentence report doesn't show any true indication of remorse on the part of Kebatu. The report also says that Kebatu said or expressed in some way that he either just couldn't remember what he was being charged with, he couldn't remember doing the things that he was being charged with, or that he just didn't speak English well enough to be able to discuss his alleged offences, because he said very little about those offences at all. Now, we've all just seen him speaking when he was being arrested. His English is by no means perfect, but the idea that it's not good enough for him to express whatever he wants to express, to some degree at least, is ludicrous. The man's just a barefaced liar. He also is supposed to have said that he felt ashamed for what he'd done. That contradicts the idea that he couldn't remember what he'd done. How can you be ashamed of something that you can't even remember doing? Now, I'll tell you at this point that the prison service has disclosed that Kebatu actually tried to commit suicide in prison, because he's been in prison since around the 8th or the 9th of July. And the man has also requested to be deported back to Ethiopia as soon as he's released. But a lot of people are saying, well, that was going to happen to you anyway. Well, let's hope it flipping does, whether he's requested it or not. Now, speaking of the man's background, the pre-sentence report actually didn't detail any traumatic life experiences that the man has suffered, because one such set of experiences, or one such experience, could have served the man to a degree, a very limited degree, I have to say, as mitigation, but there was nothing of the kind in the report. Another thing, however, that was in the report was that the man was under the influence of booze when he did the things that he did. On the 7th of July 2025, Kebatu approached victim 1, a 14-year-old girl, and her friends. He told victim 1 and her friends that they were pretty and that he wanted to have babies with them, and he then invited them back to the Bell Hotel. They refused, of course, and he then took to following them around the Epping area. And then when he came across them again, mind you, he was never very far behind them, but when he made a verbal address to them again, he made inappropriate remarks to them. He also offered victim 1 some of the drink that he had with him, a can of beer, but she said no. And then he tried to kiss victim 1. She moved her head away to prevent him from kissing her. There are all kinds of questions coming from the pieces of information that I've just cited. For instance, assuming there were passers-by, did the girls call out for help from anybody? Why didn't they run the hell away to get away from the guy? Keep in mind that victim 1 in particular is a victim. However many friends she had with her, I think it was just one friend actually, obviously would have been affected to a degree, but victim 1 was the one that was being targeted by the inappropriately sexual behaviour from this complete stranger, who apparently, by the way, doesn't speak much English and can't express himself. And so, it's just a miracle that he was able to say the disgusting things like, come back and make babies with me at my hotel. Yeah. Did they call the police? We know that if they did, the police would have taken a few minutes at least to arrive, so by that time Kebatu could have long scarpered. The very day after, Kebatu went after victim 1 again. The judge said that the things that Kebatu did to victim 1 on that occasion were by far the most serious of all. He sat down next to V1 on a bench and he touched her thigh. And that's not all he did. He tried to get victim 1 to kiss a boy who's identified as W1, and what had happened was that victim 1 had told Kebatu that W1 was her boyfriend, and she did so to get Kebatu to leave her alone and go away. And she also thought that if she snogged the boy, W1, then Kebatu would get the message that she wasn't interested in him, she just wanted him to get lost. And so she did kiss W1, and it looks like it came on the instigation of Kebatu. But far from putting Kebatu off her, he became visibly aroused at the sight of victim 1 kissing W1. And there has to be no doubt that victim 1 was thoroughly disgusted and sickened by the fact that Kebatu was obviously turned on when he saw her kissing W1. Victim 1 was 14, and on the 8th of July, she was actually in her school uniform. These are things that aggravated Kebatu's sentence, but a lot of us are sitting here thinking, aggravated, he only got 12 months, that's nothing, it should be at least 3 or 4 times that much. Well, what can I say? I've mentioned the fact that Kebatu was under the influence of booze. He showed no remorse, no genuine remorse as far as the judge was concerned. And the fact that he'd got away with doing what he'd done to victim one the day before emboldened him to do the things he did to her the next day, go after her again, target her again, and behave in an overtly and embarrassingly and unreasonably sexual way towards her. The protest that sprang from the things that Kebatu did led to a court order that banned the Bell Hotel from taking in any more migrants and to force them to get rid of the ones that they were accommodating. But then that court order was quashed by a higher court, and the Bell Hotel is still allowed to keep the migrants that they've got and take in any new ones. Other councils across the country are trying to get the court to stop migrant hotels housing migrants. But we need to keep in mind that migrant hotel owners, or hotel owners who allow their hotels to be used as migrant hotels, aren't the ones who make the rules relating to how asylum seekers and refugees have to be treated when they get into this country. So we need to keep that in mind. If we attack them, we're going after effectively the wrong people. Asylum seekers like Kebatu give other asylum seekers a bad name. A lot of asylum seekers come from very highly educated and highly paid jobs back in their home countries and could make a really important contribution to this country if they were allowed to. That is what I say. What do you say? Do you think that we should just ignore the ECHR, stop taking asylum seekers in? Because after all, we've got plenty of people in need of our own. Their needs logically and fairly and rationally should be addressed first. You tell me what you think. Another big news story that broke on the 23rd of September 2025 was the sentencing of two men for the murders of two young men that took place on the M3 motorway in Surrey, southeast England, on the 22nd of July 2024. The two murderers are Alex Rose and Charles Pardo. On the night in question, Alex Rose thought that his home was being targeted by a group of young men who were apparently trespassing in the grounds of St Paul's School behind his house. His business premises had been burgled earlier the year before, and when nobody was arrested, he told the police that he was investigating it himself. So on seeing these guys on the grounds of the school near to where his business premises were, Alex Rose got his mate Charles Pardo to come with him to look for the guys on foot, and then they got into Rose's pickup truck to continue their search. When the two saw William Birchard and Darren George, those two men, by the way, were aged 21 and 22 respectively. They saw the two men on William Birchard's e-bike. They just got it into their mind that those two men were the culprits. Those were the men that they'd seen on the grounds of the school near to Rose's business premises. And then what they did was to chase those two young men, both called William. I'll call them, sorry, they weren't both called William. William Birchard and Darren George, I'm going to call them William and Darren. Chased them quite literally to their deaths. In truth, however, William and Darren had nothing whatsoever to do with trespassing that had taken place near to Rose's business premises. They weren't the ones who were trespassing. They were travelling in no particular hurry until they saw Pardo and Rose, and they didn't know their names, but they saw a car with two men in it behind them coming up to them at speed, and that caused the two men to speed up to try to get away from them, which caused their bike to veer across the wrong side of the road at one point. But Rose and Pardo continued to pursue them at speeds of around twice the speed limit, all the way to the Sunbury Cross roundabout, where William tried in vain to escape from the two guys chasing them by navigating the roundabout the wrong way. However, Rose and Pardo followed very closely behind them the wrong way onto the slip road as William rode across it with Darren, and they were going against the intended flow of traffic until Pardo and Rose caught up with them and deliberately drove into the rear of the e-bike, which caused both young men to be thrown off it with the force of the collision. William Birchard died immediately, having suffered multiple fractures, abrasions and skin loss to his face, head, body and limbs, indicating a severe degree of force had been applied to the front of his head, which caused fatal injuries to the front and back of his brain. Darren suffered an accelerating fall as well as multiple fractures, and he also suffered, like William, abrasions to his head, face and also to his torso and limbs. He sustained a catastrophic brain injury from which it was almost inevitable that he wouldn't survive, but he was alive at the point when he was taken to hospital, but once he got there he was pronounced dead. The two men must have been utterly terrified in their final moments. It was just so unexpected and so undeserved. So what the two men did afterwards speaks volumes about the weak characters that they both evidently are. This is what the judge said, but you know, who would argue with the judge on this point? Because the point is that neither of them did anything to see if either young man could be helped. They didn't stop, they didn't get out, they didn't check on them, they didn't call for an ambulance, and neither of Alex Roche or Charles Pardo has at any time since demonstrated even a shred of remorse for what they did to these wholly two innocent men. And frankly, even if the people that they murdered had been the ones who'd been trespassing, you don't get the death penalty for trespassing, you don't get the death penalty for burglary. What the two men did do after they killed the two young men that they'd chased to their death was that Rose drove back near to his home, which is where Charles Pardo's own car was parked. Pardo then got into his van and drove away, and in driving away he went past the collision site where again he had the opportunity to stop and check on the two young men, but he didn't do so because the two young men were still there lying motionless in the road. The emergency services had been called by a lovely man called Mr. Singh, clearly a decent, public-spirited person, a brave person, and Mr. Singh also made sure that the two men who, you know, he didn't know whether they were dead or, you know, had a chance of recovering, surviving, made sure they were safe from other vehicles driving in their direction. The next 20 hours were consumed by Alex Roche doing everything in his power to evade justice. He falsely reported the vehicle that he had just used to commit the double murder to the police as stolen, and he did so after parking it away from his house and going home on foot.
Sorry, police, how can I help?
Hello, I need to report a theft of a vehicle.
Okay, someone taken your vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay, what's happened?
I came back, parked the vehicle up, and then I woke up this morning and left early doors, and then it was early this morning, but I didn't think to look this morning. I was in a rush and come back and realised that it's not there. So yes, outside. Yeah. Alex.
Your surname?
Rose.
Theft of motor vehicle. Were the keys taken?
Yeah.
So where were the keys?
I've not looked for my spare set, but I know that the ones that I had are not there. They were left on the table.
Inside your home?
Inside, yeah.
Wait, so is this a burglary then?
Well, they've taken the car, so I don't know what it comes under.
So have they come into your home and taken the keys?
Yeah, they must have, yeah, because the keys were in the house.
And you definitely can't find the keys anywhere?
No, I haven't solidly looked everywhere, but from where I know I left them, they're definitely not there. And no one in the house would have touched them. There's only one other person who lives in the house.
Okay, so essentially then we're looking at a burglary as opposed to someone has come into your home and taken it. Is that what you are under the impression?
Yeah.
Someone has come into your home and taken the keys?
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to be home for the rest of the day?
No, not at the moment. I'm at
There's
work
a
at the moment.
burglary.
I'll just pop back out.
We're going to have to send some officers into the burglary.
Okay.
Okay, so the last time you saw the car was what, yesterday? So what time did you return home last night with the car? Was it yesterday?
I came home maybe... got there about 9. I got home maybe... I couldn't tell you the exact time. Maybe after 9 o'clock. Half 9. Just before 10, 9:45ish, something like that.
Okay, so yesterday at about 10ish. And then what time did you notice that the car was missing today?
Not long ago, to be honest. I didn't notice it this morning.
Okay, so roughly what time? What, like 2 o'clock-ish or later?
What's the time now? Yeah, maybe about 2:30. I just popped back and just, I thought, hang on a minute, I saw the car was there, or parked there. It's almost a bit weird.
Okay, it's your car, is that right?
Yeah. It's a Ford Ranger.
And the colour?
Black.
And have you been victim to a similar crime in the past 12 months? Has your car been taken before?
I had a chipper stolen not long ago
what stolen?
as well. A chipper, like it was a building tool.
Did you report that?
Yes, I have reported that, yes.
Okay. Is there anything that's at your home that, you know, has been left behind by someone, any signs of forced entry footprints, anything like that?
No forced entry. What do you mean by left behind? Just anything?
So sometimes when people gain access to someone's home, they might leave behind items, you know, tools that they may have used to get in, or...
No, there's nothing there.
Rose then began his mission to get enough money together to get out of the United Kingdom. Rose's girlfriend, a lady called Tara Nags, did everything she could to help Rose get away from the UK. She booked a flight abroad, and she also booked a hotel for the two of them in Birmingham so that they could lie low somewhere well away from where they were actually both based, in order, of course, to avoid the police. When the two were caught, they were only 2.5 hours away of being on a flight. William and Darren were two well-loved young men. They've got lots of family who are devastated, heartbroken, can't believe what's happened to their wonderful young men. They made victim personal statements in court, very moving, very touching. William's dad said, quote, "Today's court outcome brings a measure of justice for our son William and his friend Darren. While no sentence can ever undo the devastation of losing him, we take some comfort in knowing that those responsible have been held accountable. William was not just a victim of a senseless crime. He was our beloved son, a brother and a friend to many. His life was filled with promise, and his loss has left a gap that will never be filled. William had a kind heart, a bright smile, and a love for life that touched everyone who knew him. We will remember him for his laughter, his loyalty, and the joy that he brought into our lives." Unquote. Darren's mother likewise paid tribute to her son. Quote, "Darren should still be with us, but he's not. A guilty verdict doesn't change the past. Justice being served doesn't heal the loss of our son. Darren was always coming and going. He couldn't sit still. He would arrive at home with friends, repair cars with his dad, then he would be off, and then he'd be back again. The coming and goings have stopped. The repairs of the cars have stopped. The buzz of a busy home has stopped." Unquote. The two murderers, mind themselves, were quite young. Alex Rose was 29 and Charles Pardo was 24. Tara Nag, Rosie's girlfriend, was also 24. As for their sentences, for the offence of assisting an offender, Tara got 3 years and she has to do at least 1 year and 2 months before she can be released on licence. Alex Rose has to do a 34-year minimum term of a life sentence for double murder, and his 21 months for perverting the course of justice with that phone call to the police that he made saying that his pickup truck had been stolen, is going to be served concurrently with the 34 years. For, again, double murder, Charles Pardo got life with a minimum term of 29 years. If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.